I am very happy to be doing this. I've had, again, conversations with each of you, but bringing this, I don't know, fair to say, I think, bit of a powerhouse group together to talk a bit about this topic. I have been really looking forward to this one for some time. So I think what we'll go ahead and do here is, Tor, I might begin with you, and then we'll go Tor, and then Stefano, and then Matt. Just introduce yourselves, and I think we'll do that same thing we did the other night when we were talking about for the ski panel design, to have each of you maybe just try to give just a broad overarching principle of how your particular company is thinking about ski boot design right now. And so we'll kind of give people maybe a brief macro picture of that, and then we're sure going to be diving into quite a few particulars. So if that sounds okay, Tor, why don't you kick us off?
So I'm Thor Verdonk. I'm with Lange and Rosnol Boots. I also work on the ski side as well. As you know, we did the meeting earlier this week on that. I've been with the company almost 29 years now, a variety of roles, starting in the race department. That's probably really where I found my passion for ski boots, working with athletes set up. And I had an opportunity to work with, some world-class athletes like Lindsey Vonn, Julia Mancuso, Ted Ligety, Bodie Miller, and so on. So that's really kind of where I cut my teeth, moved to product development about 12 or 14 years ago now. On both brands, and most recently ran the Lange ski boot brand globally for the last 3 years. Now I've moved back to being the technical product director, focused on working with the engineers and developing product on skis, boots, and bindings. To answer the second part of that question, kind of what is our company currently thinking about in boot design? For us, obviously, fit is something that's extremely important, but for me, it's really about taking fit and performance and finding where that marriage between the two are, so that you have the fit. You can have a race boot that fits extremely tight and has all the performance, but you're not enjoying your day, or you have the opposite, the marshmallow fit, and you're moving around, and then you lose part of enjoyment of your day in that sense. So that consumer experience is not great on either side. So it's really finding kind of where that fit and performance come together. That's probably one of the main things that we focus on. For us, it's not just a boot. I try to talk about this quite a bit. A mountain bike is not just a mountain bike. You have a $300 mountain bike and a $5,000 mountain bike. You have a different experience on both of those. So for us, it's not just a boot. It's about building a performance tool so you can enjoy your day, ski better in the end, and get more out of what we're developing, which is really a performance tool and the most critical piece of equipment, in my opinion. It's the only product that physically touches your body. If you think about that, outside of your ski poles, I guess your ski poles touch your hands, but I'm not sure that's going to change much, in your experience. But so that's basically kind of what we look at.
Yeah. Stefano, why don't we have you go next?
Yeah. Hi to everybody. Thank you for having me here. Yeah. I'm Stefano Mantegazza, working for Tecnica Group, and I was more years ago. I was product manager for Völkel Ski in Germany from 2000 to 2008. Then, when the Tecnica Group bought the Blister company, I moved back to Italy and I started work like a product manager for Blister at the beginning, then product manager for Tecnica ski boots, and in the last 4 years, I'm more into R&D. Basically, working together with engineers, we bring the project and we bring them forward. I take care about all the testing process we have till the validation of the product. That's my main job for Tecnica, Blizzard, and Nordica ski boots only.
Okay.
Talking about ski boots for us, like Thor said, fit. But fit for us, it's first we try to design the boots in the best way. So shape and anatomy, for us, it brings the correct fit. Then we take care a lot about our aesthetic, Italian design, and also we try to to put together this shape, anatomy, and great fit together with performance. Because I think we talk not enough about performance of ski boots normally. Now there is a big talk about how the boots they fit, how they feel in the first minutes in the shop, but then performance come too late, I think. A ski is different. Ski, everybody tests ski and they say, yeah, I like, I don't like, it's too stiff, it's too soft, it's for me, it's not for me. Ski boots, I think we don't talk enough about performance. So
maybe we'll do that then today.
Yeah.
I like this take. Okay. Matt, I don't know if the regular Blister audience, they might be sick of hearing from you, but still, maybe we'll go ahead and have you do sort of the same. Introduce yourself and sort of give that overarching. I mean, to be clear, Thor and Stefano just did a really good job of the overarching approach. So, good luck.
Thanks. I'm a little nervous now to follow up these two guys. Well, thanks for having me. It's always fun to be back. And for those of you who haven't heard my annoying voice yet, I'm Matt Manser. I'm the product manager of alpine boots and touring boots for Atomic. I've been in that role since 2010, so 10 years over here in Austria. And before that, I was a boot fitter, cutting my teeth on the sales floor, working on boots, actually from the same town that Thor is from. So Burlington, Vermont is where I spent a lot of my time. And I think Thor even worked in the same shop as I did prior to me coming there. So there's a lot of Northeast boot fitting going on in this call tonight. But so I started out my career as a boot fitter and, just working on all the company's boots, seeing what was working well, what was not working well, all the continuous problems you kind of run into as a boot fitter. And one of the things I really wanted to do joining the Atomic team was to bring that kind of boot fitting experience into the development of the boots. And so when you look at an Atomic boot, we focus on three primary things, very similar to what Thor and Stefano have already said. We focus on fit, comfort, and performance. And you can parse out fit to get to the comfort part. But when we focus on those three individual aspects, you can really tackle whatever category or boot you're talking about. Like as Thor was kind of hinting at, a race boot, a racer is going to have a very different interpretation of what fit, comfort, and performance mean versus your average skier who maybe spends 2 weekends a year in a boot. So when you look at what fit, comfort, and performance mean to all the different types of skiers that are out there, that's what you're really trying to do, in my opinion, on one hand, and then also finding a way to make, the boot fitter's life easier. Because while fit is super important, I think every one of us on this call, we don't just wear a boot out of the box. There's a lot of boot fitting that goes into it, of getting that thing dialed into your foot. So making sure you kind of tackle all those aspects in one is the simple challenge I think we all have on this call, is trying to balance that all out.
Yeah. Well, and I want to move sort of quickly here because I feel like this could easily be sort of a 10-hour conversation. And, my real objective here, I think, is this is a special group of folks that we have assembled currently. And I think that, we have had those individual conversations. We will continue to have more of those when it comes down to diving into, specific products that, each of your respective companies are coming out with. I think what would be most interesting right now is really, again, to have you three help us try to better understand kind of the state of the industry in the boot world, right? So that's kind of my primary aim for this conversation. And I hope we get there, and I promise I won't keep you for 10 hours. But so let's see how we do here. But if you guys are welcome to like mute me or tell me to shut up, because if I want you to feel free to wrench the conversation if it's going to help us stay on that kind of state of the union, right? Of in the industry. So to that end, next question. And I asked a similar question on our ski design panel, but and you guys have seen this, so I hope you've had some time to think through these. But I asked, right now, how would you generalize where the innovation is happening in the boot industry among these areas? And I asked you to maybe try to think about or rank your top 3. So where's the innovation happening? Is it in materials? Is it in, it's a related question to materials, I take it, but what we're able to do in terms of the weight spectrum of things? Is it durability? Is it out of the box fit? Is it not out of the box fit, but the customization of a fit, the work that can be done? Is it at the price? The bringing down the price of boots or price to performance ratio? Is it in the quality of the flex pattern? The quality of the flex pattern? Is it in, Tor, my favorite word, the suspension of the boot? We've also got a potential area of liner performance or liner comfort, then warmth, and then I'm leaving an other category if I missed the main area of innovation that's currently happening right now. So, Tor, I'll go with you first. What's your top 3?
Well, again, I kind of go to same thing I said during the ski one. Really, it's the summation of all these kind of parts that really come together that really show the innovation. You can't really focus on one. You got to focus on the whole recipe to some degree. For me, I think, it's something that we believe at Lange we innovated was really stance, more fore-aft stance. This is something I've worked most of my career on with the racers in my race department days. And I feel like the stances have matched the modern ski today. And other brands have I think adjusted their stances as well. So that fore-aft stance I think is a really positive that I've seen over the years. If I follow your guidelines and looking at what you have here, again, I in terms of suspension, what you mean in ski boots, a little clarification from you on that would probably help. But I do think next to kind of stance and fit, liners, I think all the brands have done a pretty good job of moving forward with liners and materials and whatnot. And lastly, I would say the flex pattern, I believe in the market has gotten more progressive, which matches the more modern skiing, in my opinion. And that's a topic. What progressive flex is something I could talk about for 2 or 3 hours, and stance as well. So I just don't have enough time for all of that. But those, I think, are my top 3. I think suspension may be in there as well, depending upon what your definition of that suspension is.
So Tor, as either quick and dirty, or actually it's exactly what I want to say about suspension, is I'd encourage people to think about the mountain bike analogy, right? So if we're going to go ride a really technical rocky trail, if you're doing that on a rigid bike, it is going to feel extremely harsh and jarring, right? When it comes to the suspension of a boot, I think this can be a factor of, could be the case that sometimes simply a heavier boot, it's going to be able to create a more plush experience, right? In terms of impacts, or really slamming into firm moguls or firm sections of snow, right? Or so I think that, and this is a bit of then on the other hand, right, we sometimes can find a lightweight boot that you can't initiate the flex off the top, right? So that would be the analogy of like in a mountain bike fork or shock, things can be, you're either blowing through that suspension or it's way too stiff to even initiate it. And so you're kind of getting a jarring feel from it, or overly plush, or a lack of supportive feel. That was my off the cuff freestyle on suspension.
Making it quick, suspension to me is more about, feeling. To me, a boot has to be alive. it has to transmit your energy into the ski to do what you want it to do when you want it to do it. But it also gives you information, right? It tells you what's going on. Am I rattly in this place? Am I solid in this place? So the boot, it's a two-way conversation between your boot in a sense of transmission and receiving. And so I think suspension kind of fits in that. I call it more about a feeling and aliveness in a boot.
Okay. Stefano.
Yes. So for us, we are really, I would say, getting crazy to get really the best fit out of the box. Really where we spend a lot of time thinking and designing and building 3D boots before we are opening a new mold to really find out the best shape. Best shape for us, it means the best fit out of the box. So I think it's where we challenge ourselves, where we can win the battle in the first minutes. If this fit, if this experience when you step into the boots is good, the boots is sold, it's gone. Then you need to have a good customization possibility to personalize via boot fitting, whatever you need to customize to really get even better, to get even a better experience. And then innovation, which has to be connected, yes, with probably customization, but also to have more performance, to have a better lateral transmission, to have a better experience, to have a better flex. Like Thor said, the flex has to be consistent, not too stiff, not too soft. Because if you look in the industry, for example, you take a 130 and 130, they are all different between us. Some brand it's really soft, some brand are very stiff, some brand they have a long movement, some brand they have a shorter. So we ask ourselves why other brands are building different flex, why there is such a big variety of flex, because there is not let's say a machine, something who can make the flex the same for everybody. So you know what I mean? There are so many different 130 out there. Yeah. And I'm sure we ask ourselves and the customer also when they ski them and they said why one brand is really soft and one brand is really stiff.
Yeah.
It's philosophy. Yeah. It's designing. There is not a reason.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is such an interesting thing, right? Because, you're all talking about fit. You're all talking about performance. Stefano has brought up the fact that, if you're someone who spends a lot of time in various 130 boots, this for a fact, there's a lot of difference of feeling. But if we were having a panel session and you each were the head brewers of a brewery, we wouldn't be asking why everybody's IPA doesn't taste exactly the same, right? It's like, well, in that world, it's like, because it's about taste and what we want to go for and how big we want to go or subtle. But I mean, Stefano, I'm going to blame you for this, but it seems like you're sort of suggesting the idea that there should be the platonic ideal of the 130 boot. But if we take if you accept the brewer analogy, it's just different tastes and different feels. So does that resonate? Resonate?
Or like horsepower in the car, at 300 horsepower, they are all different in some way. One engine has more torque down, one is pushing more up, and in the boots will be the same. Even if one day we will have a machine, we can measure the 130 flex for everybody, they will always be different because we are different, because we have different thinking, different machinery, different way of seeing things. From Austria, from Italy, from US. And I think it's good that we are not everybody all the same. Exactly.
Okay, Matt, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to ask you, Matt, to quickly give me your top 3, unless you want to go to the other category. And then we're going to run back and follow up with where we've been going on this question of, do we like the fact that there's quite a bit of variety among boot manufacturers, or do we think that actually we should actually be seeing less variety there? So Matt, the floor is yours.
The easy question.
Yeah.
you have this great list of these topics, and I would say it also has to depend on what category of boot we're talking about. Like this list is going to change in importance. If I'm making, in our range, we've got a 770 gram touring boot. And at the other end of the spectrum, we've got a 2.5 kilogram World Cup race boot. The priorities that are going to be here are going to vary widely, depending on the category of boot you're talking about.
Except that I didn't ask about priorities. I asked about where would you rank the innovations happening?
Like a Backland Ultimate, for example, that really lightweight boot we were talking about.
Yeah.
That customer does not care about first fit at all. Like they are literally taking their knife to the boot and cutting off everything they could possibly think of to get lighter. So for them, weight, suspension, bottom, like suspension is going to be at the bottom of their list.
Yeah.
Because if you ever skied those super light skis, it is crazy how tinny and jarring they feel. But that's just not on their priority at all. And that is reflected in their boot choice. So the innovations that are there, are reflected in that too. You're trying to find the lightest way to build the mold cavity, to get the thinnest plastic possible that you could still ski for that person. Whereas on the flip side, the innovation that comes from World Cup racing, now we're talking about suspension. Now we're talking about stability. Now we're talking about just on edge confidence that is needed in that boot. And so the innovations will kind of get steered a little bit depending on what category of boot we're talking about. But for the most part, for the blister reviewers, like our audience right now, I can tell you, first and foremost, I'll agree with Stefano here, first fit is going to be one of the most important things. So when we talk about fit, comfort, performance, we'll break that fit down to its out-of-the-box fit, but also its customization potential. That's how we have to look at that. And so you're going to see innovations in first fit, what that means in terms of lash shape, liner construction, but also the customization potential of that, making sure we use the right plastics that can be easily ground or stretched. They retain their shape better once they're molded. All those things are at the top of the mind, I would say, like in the all mountain world of boots.
Okay.
So one of the things that you and I've actually talked about in previous discussions is this, like, how is it that brands can be so wildly different when it comes to saying 130? And 130 has kind of become, it's not so much a flex rating as it is almost a price point thing to talk about now. There's so many different feels to a 130. And even if you could align everything perfectly, let's just say myself, Stefano, and Thor, we sit down and say, this is what the flex pattern of a 130 should be. Mm-hmm. And we go out and we try to make our boots to mirror that as best we can. It's actually going to be different for each one of us because our feet take up different volumes inside the lower shell. If any of you have tried on, a low volume 130, and if you have a low volume foot, the boot behaves a certain way with the right foot volume inside the shell. I remember being a boot fitter and trying on companies' high volume 130s 10, 15 years ago, trying to find that stiff high-end 130 for the wide foot. I'm like, all these boots feel super soft. Well, my skinny pin foot does not fill up that shell enough to give it the stability that it needs. And so long story short, even if you could say, hey, this is what a 130 should look like. Here's the progressive flex. This is the Newton meter force it's going to take to top out. And it's going to be different from my foot to your foot to somebody else's. Exactly what Stefano was saying. They're all going to feel different to different people. That's always going to be the problem.
Thor, thoughts?
Oh, I think Matt said it really well, actually, as well as Stefano's explanation. I mean, it's philosophy brand wise. I mean, there's so many factors that come into that flex, you know, that number, so to speak. And it boils down to philosophy. Where are your hinge points? Are they forward, backward, upper, higher, lower? Where does the boot activate in terms of where are you driving the lower shell? Where does that deformation happen, whether it's forward or backwards? So it's close to impossible to think of, you know, a standard in that sense. And really for me, it's more kind of circling back to this progressive flex concept. In modern skiing, we want the boot to build power slowly. You want to be able to get the feet out away from you. So you need the progressive really means that it builds, right? So where do I measure 130? Is it right when you start the flex? Is it in the middle of the flex? Is it at the end of the flex? And I think amongst all the brands, you're going to see a different philosophy in the sense of where that boot really is supposed to engage, you know, in their ideas. So, you know, for me, it's about progressive flex, the modern skiing where the flex really builds throughout the whole turn shape, allowing you to get your feet away, allowing you to be able to modulate the boot more. That to me is more important than ultimately what the number is in a sense.
Mm-hmm. Stefano, thoughts on that?
Yeah, one thought and I would ask Thor and Matt if they agree. I think a good boots, let's say it's a 130. When the boots start to move until the boots end, it should be always 130. Many boots are empty. They kind of feel too soft, too cushy, and then they become like a wall, like a block. So it's hard to find where is the 130 in this range. I think a good boot should start in the range that the boot has to move. It should be closer to the number the boot should have. Did I explain well with my English?
If I can jump in, I think that we tend to talk about these things, Stefano. So not to put words in your mouth, but to see if this resonates, it seems like that's what we would tend to call, you're trying to make the case for a linear flex pattern, right?
Yes.
That we're staying 130 throughout. Thor actually was just used the word progressive. And so this would be interesting. I mean, because this is what I was wondering, if we're still even able to do this, right? In the past, people would say things like, I have a Lange foot, or I definitely don't have a Lange foot. And I have been arguing that these generalizations don't hold up as well as they maybe used to, if they ever did. But if this is something where, if we're to say, or Stefano, if you're saying at Tecnica, we like linear flex patterns, well, that would be one identifier that would be a bit different from what Thor was just saying they're looking for at Lange. Are we in agreement all on this?
Yeah, I think it's a part of the different development that Boots has. That's what we try to achieve. Not being soft and heavy, the 130 number at the end of the flex, but we try to be, yes, progressive in one way, but more consistent. I don't want to say the other way around is not good. It's maybe even better, but our philosophy, it's our way of trying to achieve results is this one. Good or bad?
Thor, I'd want you to respond to this, and then we're going to let Matt jump in.
Well, I think, you know, Stefano is talking about, you know, maybe more linear. I think that skiing today is the progressive flex works a little bit more, particularly at the higher level, in that sense, where it allows you to build the pressure, get the feet away. I mean, we have hands-on experience with this in our race program. You know, when we moved to the more progressive flex, the athletes originally actually said, I don't know if I like it. I don't know if I like it, because the old boot was really on off. And when you have a linear flex, this is what happens. When you have that stiff and you start to move the feet away, the boot wants to engage. So when we went to the progressive flex, the athletes had to make some adjustments, and it took time. But then if you look at the results that followed with that progressive flex, they were able to use the boot in specific parts of the turn and let that power build progressively, which to me makes sense in modern skiing today, particularly with modern skis with side cut, rocker and whatnot. We ski the skis more from the center to the center, and allowing that boot to build the pressure as the forces get higher is what makes sense to us. Again, there's no right or wrong, I think is really the point. I mean,
what I'm trying to do, and I guess I will stick with like the brewery analogy. It's like, if someone was like, we make a much bigger IPA because that's just kind of what we're into. I think there is so much confusion about, frankly, when it comes to skis, consumers can just look at graphics and be like, I like that one, right? And like we know that people are buying skis that way, right? When it comes to boots, I suspect it's a lot foggier, that it's harder for people to even start trying to find start points for why we might go here as opposed to here. All right, Matt, you get 2 questions again. One, do you agree with that, what I just said, that there's more consumer confusion about ski boots maybe than skis? We'll start that. And then I want to, you do agree with that?
Yeah. Having experienced it firsthand for about 10 years, lots of confusion about which boot should I get. Okay. I think they start out that way of saying, ooh, I like that one. That one looks cool. Mm-hmm. And you're like, well, let's see if that's even remotely a good starting point for your foot shape. I think people start out just like they go into Foot Locker and buy sneakers. I want to try that one. Or my buddy said, I want to try a Hawks. They come in with these ideas. 99% of the time they're wrong. Usually they just don't know enough. And that's kind of the job of the boot fitter, to kind of guide them through that process. So it's much more difficult finding the right boot, for sure.
Okay.
With the flex component, I would follow Thor down this path. A progressive flex is something we're aiming for in the ski boots. And it's one of the things we find in our own flex testing with the robot that we have. We see a really progressive curve to a lot of different boots. And where I think Stefano's right is that a 130 has a different feel than a 110, for example. I don't see it in the flex pattern that it's always constant, but a 110 has a different flex pattern than a 130. Much like different tunes on suspension. If you have a stiffer tune or a softer tune, you're going to get different curves. They're relatively all, to some degree, progressive. They're building up as you get deeper into the travel of the boot. My personal thought on it is I like to have a little bit of a softer initiation to the boot that gradually and smoothly becomes stiffer. That's my ideal feel to a boot. That may not resonate with certain skiers, and that's kind of the point where I think we're all in agreement there, is that just different strokes for different folks kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And to add a little fuel to the fire when it comes to flex, I would personally love it also. Maybe we could, the 3 of us, band together here. We'll just ditch the whole number system altogether, and we'll go back to soft, medium, stiff, and just keep it simple for everybody.
Would be nice.
Really? Okay, so Stefano likes this soft, medium, stiff.
To lead to them to answer this next part, then it kind of gets back onto your brewer metaphor. Here's your IPA, here's your whatever. If Tecnica and Lange and Atomic have a soft flex, people will generally understand that a little better than 90 or 85 or 95. They'll say, oh, this is the soft flex. Here's the medium, here's the stiff. It just makes it a little bit more simple, and it still reflects the reality of the boots that people are trying on. And it allows for that little bit of leeway from brand to brand a little bit.
Thor, do you want to, should we start a new movement? I can work up a petition for us to get started. You in on this or no? And there might be good reasons to not go this direction. What are your thoughts?
I see the simplicity side of it. I think managing, as Matt said earlier, the price points, it gets a little more difficult when you start limiting your, to 3 or 4 stiffnesses. And then when you call it a women's stiff, how does that compare to a men's stiff? So I think there's some challenges to that. Certainly from the consumer standpoint of view, okay, us avid skiers, we probably know we've grown up, in a 90, went to a 110 and moved up to a 130 or a 140, what we all have done in our progressions in our lives. The general skier, those numbers are probably a little more confusing and don't mean anything to them, but they mean something to the stronger skiers. So I think there's some challenges and there's some positives to both. It's the same argument in skis. Should we get rid of the centimeter thing and just go to long, medium, and short? It'd be a lot easier for us in production, right?
Yeah. Okay. I suddenly don't like that one. No, yeah, don't take that from me. But I am curious about, because I think for some of us too, like, frankly, just seeing the number 90, like a boot that's a 90. First of all, what a weird number. It's like, I think for some of us, like, we've become weirdly accustomed to like a 130 or 120 or something like that. 90 just seems so foreign and odd. And I do wonder too, I don't know, I'll put it to you, how many are there people who might be very well served to be in a 90 flex boot who don't ski a 90 or a 100 because it's like, I want that one goes to 11, right? Is this a real world problem? And if so, maybe I'm going to start working on the petition if it is, like, the more that we think this is actually a problem. Matt, you have a smug look on your face. You go first.
Sure. I mean, one of the things that I used to tell people all the time is that a boot doesn't know how good of a skier you think you are or claim to be. It just knows the physical forces coming down upon it. I would have no problem putting a beginner into a properly fit 130 if that person was a huge Viking. Mm-hmm. Like, he would just normally crush the beginner 80 flex. And conversely, I know girls that are just so petite, but they're ripping skiers. A 130 is just way too much boot most of the time. So they should be in something that is just more reflective of their subjective build. Mm-hmm. And I think there's for sure a stigma on, oh, you're only skiing a 90? Bro, you should totally be in a 130 or something. So I think that'll always be there, even if you were to call it soft, medium, or stiff, But yeah, I think when anybody tries to match the boot to their subjective build, they're on the right track when it comes to flex.
Stefano, thoughts?
Yeah, I'm agree with Matt. Exactly, he explained in the best way, really. Yeah, it's like 80, 90 is the soft one. Matt were mentioning 100, 110 is the medium, and then 120, 130 is the stiff one. Yeah.
We might start a whole new thing. The death of the 130.
And Thor knows that this would wreak havoc on the industry if we did this.
Okay, but wait a second. Why? Like, because we can still have the exact, we're just going to now say, whatever you want to call it, we can call it purple and green and yellow, or we could call it extra stiff and stiff. So we can keep the same, we're just throwing the numbers away, but we can still give you your however many 4 or 5 different levels of flex, right? Thor, we'll still give you.
In the end, this is what would happen in the industry, exactly where a couple of brands have tried to do the ski analogy of small, medium, large, and people just say, well, God damn it, just tell me what the medium is. Like, how long, how tall is it? Right. So this is exactly what will happen with stiff. They're like, okay, you say extra stiff. What does that mean? 140 or 130? And in the end, that transition would be a long, long transition, first of all, and probably confuse the market even more, because half the brands might do it and the other half may not. Ultimately, I could see some simplification in it, and I can see some confusion in it at the same time. And
so it's way better to stay like we are.
No, it's
kind of simplification would be nice, but probably they are used to this, and it will take too long to go back and okay, that medium it's a 110. Okay, then let's stay there. Keep it simple.
I mean, I mean, Stefano and Matt, you guys would get that question, right?
Totally.
for the next 5 years, we would have to have it in the catalog where it says stiff, and next to it, you'd have to put your number anyways.
Okay.
You know, I mean, that's the reality, right?
Yeah. I mean, to that point, like for better or for worse, it's there. And to Thor's point, in our backland boots, especially, a lot of brands in the touring world have not put a flex on some of their boots.
Luckily.
And we did this on purpose in the backland boots. Okay, we have the Carbon, the Pro, the Expert. Everybody's like, well, what is it? What is the flex of the Carbon? And you're like, fine, I'll put in the catalog. It's a 110, like you inadvertently, you always come back around to it because it's an established barometer, at least. Like something's in place. It doesn't mean anything. And it's not tied to or anchored to anything in reality, but it's there. And to get away from it, it would be a nightmare.
Okay.
Even for us, when we are testing, we always we chat with ourselves. What kind of flex? Which number you think it is? For me, it's a 120. For me, it's a 110. Okay, then it's always this discussion.
It was funny. I was just having a conversation last night, actually with Jake Stevens from Rosignol, and we landed somehow. We just kept saying ish, and so it was like this ski is 104-ish underfoot, and maybe we just need to introduce we need to go mainstream with the concept of ish. So it's 130-ish and 120-ish. If you guys are not, willing, you're not ready to sign the petition to just go in extra stiff, medium, soft, then I'm going to make you stamp ish on all your boots, which is a little weird.
It would work in German.
I mean, the flex numbers are, similar to, I guess in cars, if you're looking at horsepower, or in mountain bikes, you're looking at suspension travel. I mean, you put a hierarchy on the numbers, and I suppose the words do the same, but it's less precise in a sense. To Stefano's point of when we test, like I think that one might be more our 120 and not our 110 that we thought, right? As we ski and we line up our stuff. I think this discussion actually makes more sense when we talk about widths, because that's probably the hardest thing for a consumer to understand is the denominations of 98, 100, 102. I would throw that out there, that, the flex numbers kind of give me a range, right?
Okay. Well, let's talk about width then, Thor.
I mean, I think here's probably, the general consumer, again, the avid skier who's grown up in this has learned to understand what 98, 100 is. And, some brands have gone to, the volume kind of statement, and still in their catalog, what do? They put 98, 100 next to it in their catalog in the specs so that it matches up and is clear. But to the general consumer looking, we've done this on the Rosinal side in women's boots with, at first, maybe we thought it was a little corny, but in the end, it really worked out well, where in our catalog, of course, we put the specs. This is a 98, 100, but we really started referring to them as, skinny fit, slim fit, regular fit. And it's gone really well. And we've seen a huge growth on our women's numbers. And I think it just connects to the general consumer a lot better.
Stefano?
Yeah, number. Yeah, this 98 or 100. It's that number in one spot of the boots, but there are many spots. So we try to keep it simple by talking about 98, 100. We try to get a little bit more deep by saying low volume, mid volume, like what Thor said, slim fit, medium fit. We try to give a bit more information without being too complicated, and it's kind of works well also for the industry, I think.
So,
and then when you go deep, you start to understand that this number you have is changing by size. So it's getting really complicated. So I think we all agree to keep it simple, give enough information, but try to keep it simple for not going crazy for us, for the shop, and for the consumer.
Mm-hmm. So here's a question. A lot of ski companies will name a ski something like, say, the Atomic Automatic 107 or the Blizzard Cochise 106, right? but it's pretty easy for me to go look at and find the tip width and tail width of that ski. How come I never see like the width of a heel pocket on a 98 boot?
Good question.
What'd you
What
say?
part of it? Yeah.
Where?
Yeah.
Exactly.
You can measure the tip, it's much easier on a ski. There's lots of straight lines.
Well, we could do with what we do on a ski, which is we take the widest point of the tail, or at least that's what we do at Blister. I mean, like when we're measuring, we will take the widest point of a tip, we'll go to the narrowest point of the weight and the widest point of the tail. We could do something like that on a heel, no?
I think to Stefano's point is that, the 98, 100, 102, which is one spot on the boot, is already only in a reference size of the 26.5, what we develop. And some brands develop in a 27.5. So then,
it's already,
it's already a mess. Way back when this was going on, I started building charts for the Roslin Lange, of every size. And this is what our waist width, the 4 foot width is. And when you go to a 25, you're down 1.2 mils or whatever that was. And I mean, in all reality, it just created havoc to have it out there. I mean, some people love that kind of information and respectfully so. But going to kind of just a volume fit. I mean, I don't think a lot of people, and this is the other part that's hard to understand, is that if I'm looking at boots and it says 98 millimeter or 100 millimeter, and then I measure my own foot and I'm like, damn, I'm 112. How the hell am I going to fit into that damn thing?
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've ever done it and put your foot into a boot that's been cut and just put your foot in without the liner. A lot of our race guys, our sales reps want those cutouts, and I'm actually against them because it freaks people out. You put your foot in there and you're like, no chance in hell. But that's the boot I ski. If I measure 110 and I'm going into a 96 millimeter boot, our foot is malleable, right? And that level of comfort that, Matt and Stefano spoke to earlier obviously changes between a high end skier or, a more intermediate to beginner skier. That this 98 thing is not something they can connect in their minds to their foot. They can easily tell you like, oh yeah, I have a pretty narrow foot. I like this type of sneaker because they fit narrow feet, or I have a wide foot.
Let's say it works. It's pretty simple and it's straight and it's not creating any confusion. So it's so far so good. Of course, we could give the height of the calf, so many measures, but I think across the industry, I think we all agree to keep it simple. Don't change winning team, like they say, right? So one measurement, one last, low volume, mid volume, high volume, it's good enough.
Narrow, medium, wide, soft, medium, stiff.
All right, we're getting.
I mean, the big thing is we're talking about shells, and anatomical shape is something that we focus on a ton, and I think all the brands do. But in reality, I think if we're all honest with ourselves, I say 80% of the fit of the boot comes from the liner. Ultimately, you can take a great anatomical last, and with a terrible liner, you can make it terrible. I think we've all experienced that in our testing, right? And when you nail the liner is when you're like, oh, there we go.
Because there is so much liner normally to accomplish.
Yes.
We will maybe talk about liners here in a second, but I'm very curious. At the very start of this conversation, Stefano, you said that you don't think that we are talking enough about performance currently or these days when it comes to ski boots. And I don't know if you have yet sort of spelled out exactly what you mean by that. What do you mean that we're not focused or we're not talking enough about performance?
My meaning was that when we go on this big ski test, you can jump from ski to the next ski. You can ski 10 ski in 2 hours. And this ski, it's got edge grip, it performs, it's stable, blah, blah, blah. Boots, because we don't have the chance to test so many boots like we test so many skis. I think also for consumer, they go in the shop, they buy a boots, and then they have it. Not many times consumer, they have chance to test many different boots. Beside the test they can do into the shop. And into the shop, they only can test how their own feet match that boots. So we are again back into the best fit out of the box. And then I think between the industry, we win the battle of moving boots in that moment, in that minutes, in that 2 minutes. And then it's performance, it come way after, a lot after. Because there is, my meaning, because there are consumer, dealer more, but consumer, they don't have many chance to test many boots, as they have many chance to test more skis. That's why fit, customization, the store, innovation is enough. Performance, it's something you give for granted. You say like this, you have it. We try to put a lot of performance in the boots, but the consumer get it at the very end. Not like the ski, they get it immediately.
Yeah.
You know, I express myself. You understand?
Yeah.
Okay.
And this is something that we were really thinking about in creating the Blister Summit, was the whole boot question, right? And I would be interested to hear, I mean, we made a, fairly easy decision this year, at least, to be like, you know what, in a year of COVID, we're just not even dealing with boots. But in theory, I love the idea that among the folks that have come and are, testing and providing feedback on a number of skis, I would love if we were able to do this with boots as well. Now, are we into this? There are going to be some obvious challenges to this, but I think my question is, do you think those challenges are insurmountable? Or would you like to see, like at next year's Blister Summit, we're starting to let individuals get in and try a number of different boots? Matt, I'll let you go first.
Demoing boots and testing boots, as Stefano said, you're buying it based on fit first. And it's kind of a leap of faith that you're like, okay, I'm buying into the performance level that is being promised here. Demoing boots is something I've always kind of seen as like a double-edged sword. Like so much of the performance of a ski boot is linked to its fit. When it fits you properly in terms of foot shape, leg shape, and geometry. And if you really want to unlock your boot's performance potential, you really want to go through the fit with a fine-tooth comb, like making sure you're in the right last width or volume for your foot shape, that you're forward lean and your stance and your cuff alignment and your sole canting. If you were to check off all those boxes, you would have a boot that skis. I would bet a lot of money that that's a winning recipe for somebody. And when you're not able to do that, it does sacrifice the performance a little bit. If someone's a low volume foot and they take a medium volume boot out, they're going to think it doesn't ski that great because their foot's moving around side to side. They just can't find the balance point of the boot right because they're not locked into it. It can be really good that you can, that's how that boot feels. I love that flex pattern. I hate that one. I didn't like this. You can feel those things. But then sometimes if you're in a boot that may be right for you, but your foot's in the wrong spot, so you're not able to put your custom footbed into the boot and your foot is literally sitting sideways inside of it, you might blame the boot when it's really a really simple thing that can be done to make that boot work for you and it will ski correctly, for example. So it can go both ways. I think people have to be kind of educated a little bit to say, you may try this boot, but you may not like it if it's not fully dialed in, especially if you've got a Luke foot, for example. If God hates you and your foot is just not happy in ski boots, you're going to not be able to focus on the performance of the boot half the time if you've really got a fit issue.
Yeah, it's getting complicated, like Matt said, because you should take the people, probably scan the fit and said, you are in the low volume category. You cannot go in the mid volume because we want to have a good experience. Your fit is made for that kind of boots. So it's getting really complicated. Because like you said, Matt, if the person goes in the wrong boots, wrong volume, maybe he will say, doesn't ski well, it's not for me. Because it move around, Otherwise, you have to customize, like Matt said, so it's getting really complicated. It's not like ski that everybody can jump on the ski, go one run, I like, I don't like.
Thor, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think these guys hit a lot of really great points. What I would say is I think boot testing is very difficult to do. You really need to know your own foot, know what your limitations are in places, or and preferences. So boot testing, I think, is not the easiest thing to do. I go back to what I said a little bit at the start, that I believe that a boot has to be alive, right? You have to transfer the energy, and it has to, but most importantly, and what's not really talked about, and this is to Stefano's point of performance, is what does the boot give back to me? What does it tell me about the environment I'm in, on hard snow, soft snow, in the bumps? My balance is really connected to that. And so I think if you do boot testing, it's really important not to try to mix everything, and you're testing boots as well as testing skis at the same time, because I can tell you really clearly that in boot testing, if just changing the ski, the boots, or changing boots on the same ski, you start to feel a difference, and you may actually be in a boot that makes a ski not ski that well, or vice versa. And we've experienced that in our testing. And so I think if you're going to do boot testing, you have to do boot testing to try to have this kind of concept. Hey, I'm going to take this ski and this boot this run, and then I'm going to take this ski and this boot this run. Yeah. You haven't taken out the variables.
Jonathan, just to add something. We meet with Thor every year for those 3-4 days when we are testing all the boots. It's a lucky 3-4 days for us because we can ski all the boots, and we go day by day. One day we do the all LV, the all low volume. Next day we do the all mid volume. And for example, just a stupid example maybe, I have a low volume feet. So when I ski the low volume boots, I'm pretty confident that more or less they match my feet. Yeah. When I go to the mid volume, I put 2 socks. I know it's not the best way, but with 2 socks, I kind of feel the boots a little bit better. I can have probably a better feeling for that boot. And we always ski with the same ski, because you have to test one thing at a time. So ski, always that ski, and we try to, that's just to tell you how difficult it is if you want to go really deep into that boots.
You have to take out that ski variable in order to really feel the characteristics of one boot to the next boot.
And sometimes we talk, Thor, you like that boots? You like, what do you think? We have a good relation,
absolutely
good exchange of information.
Mm-hmm. No, it's cool. And frankly, I mean, we'll have this conversation, later, but it would be interesting in theory, like if we were going to bring boots into what we're doing here at the summit, I think we probably would just sort of mandate that rule. Like, you have to go ski it on the ski you know best, or the ski you ski the most. And because that's just, we well know that it's pretty worthless to hop on a new ski in a new boot. It's fine if you're going to go through our process, maybe, where we're going to spend 10 or 20 days in the boot before we have to write about it. But if you're trying to establish some meaningful, quicker connections, too many variables. This is great, and I'm so happy on this very distinguished panel on ski boot design that we somehow managed to talk about how God hates Luke's feet, or God hates Luke. So that just gonna tick that box off. But anyway, I do want to talk a bit about women's specific ski boots. And I think, again, if we're interested in just talking about the state of the union here, I guess I would encourage you to talk about some of the trends you're seeing, and maybe that only means like trends at your own company, or the way that each of your companies is thinking about these things. But let's introduce a whole nother level of complexity here. But when you are designing boots specifically for women, what's going on, and what exactly is changing, and what are the most obvious, easiest changes to make, and where does it get complicated on your end?
No, I mean, I think, for us, both on the Lange side and on the Rosno side, the energy that we spend on the women's boots is quite a bit of time. And I would say, to your points here that you listed, I mean, I think Fit is a key point. Women's feet tend to be a little more slender and require more of a heel pocket. I think this is something that any general person, even if you've never skied, you put your foot into a boot and right away, somehow, even that person who's never even been on snow kind of sees, can I lift the heel? So that's a part of the boot that's really important for us on the women's side. We have a women's test team and we have women product managers who are very involved on the fit and particularly also the graphic in that side of things. But the amount of work we do on the liner to match that is takes a lot of time, but is worth it because the women definitely need a different fit than the men's. So we recognize that. So as we develop the men's boot, we develop the women's size, and the 24.5 is our reference at the similar time. It starts a little bit behind the men's just because you want a proof of concept, and then we can start on the women's side. There is for sure an attention to warmth for us. This is something that, my girlfriend's an ex-NCAA ski racer and hard charger, and she still wonders, like, is this one going to be warm when I bring home a new boot for her? So, even at all of those levels, I think those are really, really important. And last point for me would be stance. Again, I said I've dedicated a lot of my life in ski boots to stance. And I think that's a direct important point on the women's side. So they can perform the best out skiing. And that stance also, in my opinion, helps warmth of how the foot sits in the boot.
So, Thor, just to clarify, when you say stance is really important in your estimation when it comes to women's specific boots, I assume you are talking about a more upright stance as opposed to a more forward lean stance, if that's English.
I am, and I think this is contradictory to where the industry was 20 years ago, 15 years ago, but a little bit flatter, again, not zero ramp angle, and a little more upright stance is a more natural position. Women's center of gravity tends to be a little lower and a little farther back. And the more you throw that forward, the more they actually go lower and backwards in that sense. So that more natural stance gives you a stronger starting position, puts less strain on the muscles, the tendons, and the nerves, and blood veins running through. So you get some warmth out of that, but you also get less fatiguing skiing and more powerful skiing from that position, particularly with modern skis today.
Matt, at Atomic, does what Thor is saying resonate with what you're finding in the feedback you're getting from women and from of your skiers and racers and the general public, or do you have a fairly different take on things?
Generally, I'd agree with Thor for sure. And one of the things where I not necessarily disagree, but just one of the things I've noticed, fitting boots and also like fitting bikes in the summertime at my old shop. I did a lot of the bike fitting as well. And you can line up 10 girls and you're going to see 10 wildly different things going on, just like you would with guys. So there are some general rules for sure. I think almost all of our boots from 3 brands here, the women's boots have lower cuff heights. They're a little bit more open, and there's liners to match that. But at the same time, you're going to see some girls that have really skinny legs with almost no calf muscle, So sometimes women can be better suited in a unisex or a men's boot. And sometimes, conversely, you can flip that around. There's some guys that could be better off in a women's boot, to be honest. Just, again, the boot doesn't really know your gender. It just knows what's going inside of it. Mm-hmm. And every brand's going to make women's specific stuff. And this is kind of where, I'd throw in some of the boot fitting talk and just say, well, just pay attention to who is in front of you at that time. Fit the person, find them the boot, then you're going to have success. If you get too fixated on some of these ideas, sometimes you might get steered the wrong way. But in general, I think you could say women definitely fixate on being warm in ski boots. It's definitely something at the top of the priority. But also, I don't know any guy that wants to be cold either, you know.
Mhm.
And so I think all of us are putting, some kind of insulation technology into both the men's boots and the ladies' boots for this exact reason. I know some of our athletes, he'll probably crucify me for saying this, but no one complains more about being cold in ski boots on the guy's side than Chris Benchetler.
Huh.
His wife, Kimmy, is a snowboarder, so she's always warm and toasty, and he's always jealous of her because he's frozen in ski boots all day, and no one wants to be cold, I think some of the marketing kind of leads, in one direction or the other, but for the most part, we at Atomic, we tend to build the boots relatively similarly between men's and ladies, with the exception of cuff height and liner height. That'll be the biggest difference between the men's and ladies' boots. So the lower shell is identical between men's and women. There's the plastic in us for us is the same. The lower foot portion of the liner is more or less the same. On some boots it changes, but for the most part, like here's the fit that works for that shell. And we tailor the upper part of the liner to match the cuff, which is a little bit lower, about 15 millimeters for most of our boots, and a bit more open at the top circumference. Those are the general things we would change on the ladies' side.
That's helpful. I appreciate that. Stefano, your turn.
Yeah, I think they touch all points in a really good way. I think something is for us very frustrating is the fact that we figure out together with the university that if you want to have warm feet, and we all need to ski with warm feet, you need to have room. If you have a narrow boot, which ski very well, which fit like a second socks around your feet, you can put the best material. We are all using Primaloft, Cilliant, all the latest thermal insulate material. But if you don't have room, if you don't have space, you will get somewhere pressure and you will have cold feet. I don't know if you agree. So if you want to have warm feet, you need to have room. And having room means losing control and not having the best performance for the boots. So it's a difficult, very difficult things to achieve for all of us, I think. Even if we are using the best insulation material that we can have. And I think we are working on the same direction. We have women to women. Stance is perfect, like Thor described, what women they need to have. Everybody, I think, has a lower calf, a dedicated volume on the top. We have a narrow feet and some softer, for example, the external material we are using on the line, it's softer for the women. And the feet, the V, it's more closed around the ankle and tighter fit for women. Yeah.
So maybe to try to summarize this, we could say something like proper fit, high performance, warmth, pick two.
Keith Bontrager did that in the bike world.
I don't think you can pick two, to be honest. And I don't think that's not how we approach our boot development. We pick two things, then I don't know if we would build that great of a product. So, I mean, for sure, you put weight on whether you're working on, let's say, an intermediate to beginner level boot or wide comfort boot, or whether you're talking, a performance boot. I would say fit and performance are key. That's why you're out there doing the sport, at least if you're an avid skier. It's something we focus on the Lange side. We really looked at how women move through the flex pattern. So, and developed a tongue with our shin control to fill the void where they, flex in their flex pattern. So I guess if I have to pick two, I think it's fit and performance. And I think if you do the fit right, then the warmth comes with it.
But I don't know, my experience tends to resonate with what Stefano has said. Like if you really get that snug fit, this often translates to a high performance boot. And I think I've just, over my career, I just stopped. My feet were cold today. My feet are cold most days I ski. And so you are pushing back a bit here, Tor. Again, just to be clear, I think my experience is a bit maybe more aligned with Stefano's, that it's like if it's really, really
precise,
if it's really snugly fit, it's gonna directly impact warmth. Tor, you're
I wouldn't say that. I think the general trend that we've seen in the last 10 years, and we even see this on the World Cup. When I started in the race department, we were downsizing the ladies, 3 or 4 sizes from when they showed up to us. And you're seeing less of that downsizing today, because I think in modern skiing, you're using and articulating the foot and the ankle motions much more. So I think even
That
when we
makes sense.
say an LV of today would probably fit like an MV of 10 or 20 years ago, right? So, I mean, I think we've improved that. I still think you can have let's call it, the word I like to use is precise fitting boot. And with technologies and liners, and with what we do with the instep pocket, which is where main vein crosses over, you have a soft piece of material there where you don't need the hard plastic. And this allows the blood to flow a little bit better. I mean, in the end, inherently, it's ski boots. They're plastic ski boots. Plastic gets colder when it's cold out. I mean, we're not offering a boot that's your body temperature. I don't think anybody is, outside of our heated models in that sense. But I think if you get the fit precise enough, I still think you can. So that's why I go back to fit. To me, really is, and on top of Stefano's point and the insulation together, those things work together to give you more warmth. And I think we've seen that also in men's boots getting warmer than they were.
But Jonathan, it's if I can add something, in a modern ski boots now, I think along the whole manufacturing, the toe box, it's more roomy versus years ago. Even in racing boots, like Thor said. So even athletes, they need to have more sensibility, a bit more room to be warm. So it's going in this direction also for them. Yes, tight, yes, precise, but enough comfort, say, to stay precise, to ski at the best performance and be kind of warm. Because the shape is much better now. The V, it's tighter on the heel pocket and wider in the toe box versus years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, I think.
Yeah. Matt, you've been patient. I want you to weigh in on what you've just heard here. But let me ask this question. Why were toe boxes so pointy and narrow? Like, why did that need to ever be a thing? Like, if you've got a good fit through the midfoot and heel and a good cuff, it seems like that toe box never really needed to be super small and tight. So help me understand what I'm missing about, I don't know, in the evolution of ski boots or something, or if I just should have said this back, I don't know, 10 or 20 years ago, and the rest of the skiing world could have, thanked me. Matt, go on that. What am I missing here?
Well, I think, a high performance fit, you don't want your foot to move, for example. Like, that's just core concept. If your foot's moving around, you've got wasted energy transmission. It's not going to ski as well. So obviously I wasn't developing boots that far back, but I was fitting them and noticing what we would call toe hold. You've got this really arrowhead shaped toe box. And I'm like, why is this a thing? And my own take on it was that, well, so many people don't ski with footbeds, especially in the early 2000s when I was noticing this problem. And so they need the boot to just hold their foot in place because they're not using the right devices to do it for them. And as things have evolved, as Stefano and Thor were saying, you don't need to have this vice grip fit everywhere. As we're learning more about what holds the foot in place, midfoot and heel is way more important than crushing your toes in place, and also as Thor's point, as liners have evolved, as a liner fits better and that holds your foot in place too, you don't need to have this death grip front to back that you might have had to have 20 years ago when last looked a certain way. Liner technologies, were 1/10 of what they are now. in terms of customization, in terms of, it's even how to build the liner is completely different now versus back then. So I think that was all kind of the recipe of what brands were doing to hold the foot in place. And as things evolve, you're rightly seeing that there's more toe room in these modern boots, especially even in race boots. They're much more open in the toe box than what they used to be.
Matt, I want to give you a chance to kind of respond to the previous discussion I was having with Thor and Stefano here about warmth and fit. And I just want to give you a chance to weigh in on that since I gave them time. This is like a presidential moderating thing now, and I'm trying to be fair. So, yeah.
No, I honestly, everything, so much, I should say, not everything, but so much comes back to having the right fit. And if you have a proper fit, like when anybody would come into the shop and say, hey, my boot hurts, the first thing I would do is take the liner out, put their foot in the shell, see how much space we're dealing with. Is the boot too big, too small, right volume? What's going on here? And in general, there is a proper volume that you're looking to see inside the boot when the foot's in there, and you kind of think about the liner being in there as well. As Thor mentioned, if you really put pressure over the instep of the foot, you're shutting down blood flow. That's one of the golden rules of boot fitting, is be mindful of that if someone has cold toes. And I think at a certain point, yes, you are going to be cold if you really get an aggressively downsized fit. I think that kind of has to be the trade-off that will be there, that has to be part of the conversation. If you're saying, the number one thing I want to have in my boot is a very responsive fit, and I'm willing to sacrifice warmth to get there. Mm-hmm. There's always going to be a trade-off, as Stefano was saying. And this is exactly how, down insulation works in jackets. Air is what keeps you warm.
Yeah.
If you don't have airspace, you are not going to be warm. You can use the best insulation you could find, but if you're taking away all the airspace and it's just foot smashed against liner, smashed against shell, that's just going to be cold. The trick is to find a way to get that Goldilocks amount of space and foothold into your fit. And when you achieve that, you really can have a warm boot that skis well. I fully believe that's possible.
I want to go for another 8 hours, but I think we won't do that. And instead, I had given you in advance several other questions here. And I think what I'm going to do is, this will not be the last time we talk. I want to do this again. I think this is really fruitful and productive. And I feel like you all are doing a great job to sort of address what I was hoping for, that we would be getting a bit of a state of the union on where we are in terms of ski boots and boot design. So I guess what I'd like to do is finish by having you each pick one of those other questions, or you can throw mine away and go off on your own. But I'll open up the floor and, let you suggest or talk, speak to a particular other topic that we haven't yet addressed here. Who wants to go first on this?
Lightweight. We see this trend starting years ago. And personally, we always like to put 50 or 70 or 80 grams more into the boots to get the performance, the warmth, the durability, and the right flex, the right experience we need to have. So I personally don't like this lightweight trend, because it's create, I think, problem and not a good experience for skier. I mean, light enough to have the performance you need to have, but not just chasing the lightweight. It's something we saw. It's easy to build a light ski boot. It's very easy. But then you sacrifice a good liner, good material, a good experience, a good flex, a good performance. Durability, they tend to crack, to have problem. So we are very careful of chasing straight this lightweight in all category. I'm talking from touring to high performance ski boots. We tend to put more weight to have a better fit and more performance. Then sacrifice 50 grams to have a lighter weight boots on the shelf for that moment. That's what I think.
Thor is in agreement on this one. I think we can say from another. Thor, I'll let you speak to this if you like.
Well, as you said, we could pick one of these last questions, and that one would be the trend that I see.
That would have been
the most frustrating is this weight. I think we've done it as an industry. We've sold this kind of promise and dream through the touring side of things. And obviously weight is tangible, and it's easy for the shop kid on the floor to sell it like, hey, hold this boot and hold this boot. Oh, there must be a benefit. But I'm really a traditionalist. I believe a ski boot should be alive and have performance. And again, I've talked about transmission, but also that information coming back to you. And being a traditionalist, I'm a polyurethane, polyether guy. It has energy. It's energetic, absorbs energy and gives energy. And when you go to the lighter weight plastics, you lose that. Through innovation, we also play with it, and other brands play with it with additives into the plastic, but nothing really skis like polyether and polyurethane. And all the brands that sell a lightweight boot, us included, if you look at their World Cup boots, the ones that really have to perform, they're all polyether, polyurethane, right? Because that is the most reactive plastic, giving you transmission and reactiveness. So the weight thing has always been a little frustrating to me. And if I go a little deeper in it, in the end, you start to pull things out of the boot to try to gain this weight limit. And you have to give something to get that. In a sense. And, for me, in the end, when I look at weight, we talked about this in ski, and I think it's even more so in boots. We're talking 200-300 grams from somebody saying, oh, that's heavy. And 200 grams, it's what 3 AA batteries. And again, I'll say it again. And this is what I use in our Lange, with our Lange product is, if I give you 3 batteries and say, put this in your pocket, you're going to ski like a champion. You're going to give me those batteries. I'll put them in my pocket. But when we look at the boot, we have this mentality of like, oh my God, that's so heavy, 200 grams heavier. And what you give up for that, I think, is a lot. It's your ski ability. It's your experience on snow. So the weight thing is frustrating. There's a weight to power ratio that you got to find a balance to. That's for sure. I don't think boots should weigh, 3 kilograms, but I think there's a happy medium in there. And for us as a brand, we're focused on, even in the touring category, we're focused on a category that I don't think really people talk about enough. We talk about touring, side country was the word for a little while, but I talk about it as the skiers touring, right? The people who are going up. And the reason they're suffering and going up is for the down. And if that's who you are, then, that extra 200 grams is going to help you in the part that you really went there for. So it's about the right weight, I guess, in the end. I mean, if you're truly an uphill guy, the lightweight makes sense. Mm-hmm. Yes. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's just as that kind of migrates over, we see it. And, the pendulum always swings in our industry. We talked about this in ski. The pendulum swings lightweight because it was easy marketing story to tell, easy for the shop kids on the floor to sell. So we see this swing, and then we always see things kind of come back to normal. We've seen it in waist width and rocker and side cut, and we'll see it in ski boots as well.
Matt, you're up.
Yes.
Now, okay, just for the record, because I'm starting to get some comments in and some emails in from people who are like, "Dear Jonathan, you jerk. You're telling all the ski manufacturers to make skis heavier and that boots should always be heavier." And that's not exactly my take on this, right? And I will say, to all of your credit, I definitely think that lightweight skis and lightweight boots are skiing better now than ever before. So, while I am the last person on earth trying to encourage, or asking anyone to take weight out of skis or ski boots, I think we know that. I do think that, I used to have benchmarks in terms of weight where kind of an over under. And I think that all of your companies are doing things that are impressive, that like some things are getting lighter. And what we're finding is that the performance is better. Like weight has come down a bit and performance has been maintained or improved. So, and yet it's just funny. I mean, I feel like I want to say this because I don't want hate mail coming in or something. But on the ski panel and now on this panel, you all are adamant about like, get off the lightweight thing, people.
I don't think any of us hate or are frustrated by weight. It's that it's the focal point of the decision. I think that's the key, right? And is that the right decision for you and what you're going to do in your skiing? I think the weight has a clear advantage if you're a touring guy for going uphill.
Yes.
And if you're racing, your boots are going to be heavier, thicker walls, heavier plastic and whatnot. And finding that balance between, my issue is not with actual trying to focus on getting lighter weight, but it's that it becomes the focal point of, lightweight is going to make it ski better. And really, again, I go back to it's the sum of the parts, and 200 grams heavier, but the walk mechanism works more efficiently or matches your foot better may actually be more of a benefit to you than the weight. But if you focused only on the weight, you've made a decision on that. So it's about, the specific focal point of weight, not actually the concept of lighter weight.
Yeah. Obviously, lightweight is, for me, it's more of a consequence. What I mean by that is if my goals are always fit, comfort, performance, I'm looking at each category and defining what does that mean for a touring consumer? What does that mean for a racer? And weight, to Thor's point, is not going to matter as much for a World Cup racer. I should say lightweight is definitely not going to matter for a World Cup racer, but it is going to matter for somebody who's touring a lot. And this is where the mountain bike metaphor comes into play very, very well. There's going to be bikes that are super light and they're going to float up the climb. And there's going to be bikes that I don't care about the weight as long as it's soaking up everything in my path on the down. And I remember when, and you're kind of seeing this now in the downhill mountain bike world, sure, you could make a 25-pound downhill bike. It's not going to ski as well. It's going to skip around and bounce off of things versus plow down the track that you're setting it to. And so I think the weight discussion has to really apply to what category of boot are you talking about? What are you doing with your ski? And does it make sense to have lightweight, or does it make more sense to have better suspension, a better fit? What are you doing? Where are you going? I think that's going to be always the first thing. And then weight is going to be a talking point that is next on the list.
Well, gentlemen, it is now very late in Italy and Austria. And so again, while I would love to keep this going, I think the polite thing to do would be to let Stefano and Matt, go to sleep. But I very much appreciate this. This was pretty much everything I was hoping for, other than I wish that we could keep it going and get through more topics. And so, what I really hope is that next year, maybe you all will be in Crested Butte and we can chop this up in person. And also the attendees can just throw things at me so that I shut up and stop asking questions, and we'll get more questions coming in from the folks here. So I'm sort of feeling apologetic to everyone right now. But you all have done a very good job of sort of giving us that State of the Union. And so I'm very grateful, that you were all able to come together at these strange hours for some of you. And thanks so much for getting us better informed on Bootland today.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Thank you very much. It was a very nice conversation.
Well, thank you. Thank you all.
Good to see you, Stefano. Good to see you, Matt. Hopefully we'll see each other in person someday.
Look forward to it.
Soon.
22, 23 maybe. Who knows?
Yeah.
As soon as better.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thanks so much to all of you, and take care. Again, gentlemen, thank you so much.